Well, I'm going to now talk about the role of military in peacekeeping. There are three issues we're going to cover in this. The first is the gender participation in MONUSCO, with special emphasis on the Latin American context. The second issue we're going to see is how gender in the military force can assist in peace building. And the third issue I'm going to talk about is integration in a complex mission. MONUSCO has a best practice of joint protection, joint monitoring, joint verification, joint assessment. I'll talk a little about that. Okay. I'll also request, when I talk of role of military, I would want the lights to come down because I have some slides to show photographically which will give you a fair representation of what is it on ground, right? Just when I come to that. Okay, next please. This is just a recap of how the whole force is structured, and you can see that the force in the mission is only one small aspect of it. Right, next. These are the mission objectives. We've seen the mandate. I won't labor on this anymore. The whole essence of it is to support the government of DRC to disarm the negative armed groups, reintegrate the ones that are inside, take out the people, the foreign armed groups, give state authority back to the government, ensure security and safety of the civilians, give them support as far as technical and logistics is concerned for the elections. This is a gist of what MONUSCO does as far as mission objectives are concerned. Next, please. All right, now these are little statistics on the contributions. Can I have the lights down a little bit? Maybe they can read it as well. You can see as far as contributions are concerned. Okay. For those of you who have the TVs on the side, you can have a look. It may be clearer there. You can see the Latin American contribution is 1331, of which there are, I can't get the figure clear there. There are 86 women. Now, next please. You can see that the total contribution of females in MONUSCO is about 2.2%. As far as Latin America is concerned, next please. Okay, the contribution of Latin America is, Uruguay is the fourth largest contributor with 1181 troops, and 14th in the list is Guatemala with 150. This is only contingents. I'm talking of troops. I'll talk of military observers separately. Right. Next, please. The breakdown. You can see the Uruguayan, it was mentioned in the morning also. I think Renata covered it when she talked about the Uruguayan. Only one small unit that was missed out was the airfield support unit at Kavumu with 94 personnel. And of course, Guatemalans are there, 150. And if you just see the gender balance here, next please. You can see there are 86 women here with an average of 6.5% contribution, as opposed to 2.2%, which is the MONUSCO contribution. So the Latin American context and gender is pretty good, but still not quite there. Okay, now next for the military observers. At the bottom left screen, you can see there are 16 troop contributing countries, and apart from the 16 troop contributing countries, 34 other nations contribute military observers and military staff officers. You can again see the Latin American context. There are 77 military observers or military staff officers from Latin America, of which we only have 2 women from Bolivia. Next, please. The total contribution is 24 as far as the MILOBs and MSOs are concerned, and that translates to 3.3%. Next, please. And that's just 2 from Bolivia, it's 2.5%. So you can see the entire participation in peacekeeping, the figures are pretty low. All right, next, please. This is the breakdown of the military observers. You can see 5 nations are contributing. All right, now the force per se. Next, please. You see, the force is organized into 4 brigades and 2 sectors. Each of the brigades is commanded by a brigadier, and the 2 sectors are commanded by colonels. I won't go through the various compositions. I will just look at the geography of DRC and to see how the troops concentration pans out. Next slide, please. Okay, this is the force capability. Maneuver units are 15 infantry battalions plus 2 force reserves. One is the Ghanbat, one is the Uruguayan battalion at Goma. And the rest, you can see force multipliers, 3 SF companies, one of which is from Guatemala, 6 aviation units, one is an Uruguayan aviation unit. We've got the Uruguayan riverine team that operates in the Lake Kivus, and it operates now in Tanganyika. And these are other force enablers, you can have a look. I mean, the whole range of them. Next, please. Please, I want to take your attention to how the force is concentrated. Next slide, please. Now, please take your attention to the right top corner of the screen. You will see between the provinces of Oriental, the Eastern Oriental, the North Kivu and the South Kivu, almost 90% troops are concentrated there. In the round, you'll find the percentage of troops. That's because maximum mineral wealth of DRC, this is gold, copper, coltan, is available there. The maximum number of armed groups are there, and therefore, where there's armed groups, you need military presence, and therefore 90% of the force is there. In the rest of the country, it is not so much as militant or negative armed groups. It is more of ethnic clashes, Kasayans, Katangans, which need the policing function. And our 8 formed police units, apart from a little bit of military to have our eyes and ears there, is there in the other areas. So this is how the entire force is organized in DRC. This is just to give you a rationale for the organization. Next, please. Now, role of military in protection of civilians. We first see the threats. The range of threats. Next, please. I mean, you can see the range of threats. I mean, it's not only negative armed groups, it's demobilized soldiers, it is ethnic clashes, it is ethnic affinities. You can just name it, proliferation of weapons, porous borders, government forces that are ill-disciplined, police that is ill-disciplined. I mean, the range of threats are so many, and therefore also qualifies the protection of civilians task, which I had mentioned earlier. To tell you why protection of civilians, this is also a contributing factor when you have a look at the threats. Now, I have some photographs. If we can just have the lights off, then you'll be able to see the photographs clearly. Thank you very much. Yes, next slide, please. I'll try and explain the role of the military pictorically. Now, the force in that 90% I had explained to you is disposed of in a manner of company operating bases, which means they're near the population centers, they occupy areas that dominate these, they patrol, next please. They patrol the areas which we find the negative armed groups move, or where the ladies go to pick firewood from the villages, or the ladies where they go to till the farms. These are the potential areas that we identify, and that is the areas we patrol. We also jointly patrol with the FARDC as well as the PNC. On the photograph, you can see on the right top, you can see in the blue PNC soldier patrolling along with us. The whole issue is it's an enabling exercise to vest state authority back into FARDC and the PNC. Next slide, please. We establish surveillance centers. Now, these surveillance centers are established along with the civil affairs section. We have the community liaison assistants. We have our interpreters with us. We have the PNC, the FARDC co-opted to essentially to get early warning for any negative armed group attacks or any recruitment of children or any sexual exploitation. Next, please. Now, when we carry out joint planning of operations, it is carried out with FARDC. It's only after the joint planning has been approved and the screening, as explained to you, done earlier, which Elsie had talked about. What we do is we assess the commander and the deputy commander whether he has any human rights violation record. Some of these soldiers are integrated. They were negative armed groups earlier. Now they've been brought back into the mainstream and got into the army. So we see if they're clear. Once they're clear, we only provide advice and logistical support when operations are carried out against negative armed groups by the military. So we assist them in their planning. Next, please. It's very important for us to connect with the people around, and therefore there's a need to get in touch with the chief administrator, the governor of the province, the collectivity, the groupment chief, to the pastor, the doctor, the teachers, etc. And this is how the environment has to be carried along, trying to explain to them what we are doing, in addition to the police and the FARDC. Next, please. This is capacity building, enabling the FARDC and the PNC in their training requirements. Next, please. Humanitarian assistance in times when vehicular accidents take place, in times when there are natural calamities, fires, the force chips in with this humanitarian assistance. Next, please. This is winning of hearts and minds. You can see interaction, playing some games, construction of schools, and I will talk with gender-specific quick impact projects right towards the end. And medical assistance. Medical camps are held in remote villages. I've already explained to you there's lack of infrastructure. If the road is there, the road will be non-motorable in times of rains. The only way to get through is helicopter. If you put a medical camp and provide assistance, it comes as a great succor to the people there. Next, please. Right, now I'll just explain one situation where you get information that a negative armed group is going to attack. Now, how do you get this? The common thread is, how do you get it? Remember, the negative armed groups stay with their families. Their families pass on this information. We have community liaison assistants who pass on this information. You get this information, the company operating base receives it. Remember, the communication is tenuous. We have to use helicopters, and helicopters are restricted by two things. One is weather, and second is visibility conditions. Unfortunately, right now, our helicopters don't have night flying, and the weather there, as in the hills in the east, as you would have seen, sometimes doesn't permit flying. Right, he informs, we decide to insert a quick reaction force. That's the only way you can reach there. So what is the sequence of events? The helicopters come to the mounting base. The troops are mounted. What you can see is the South African Oryx helicopters, which take 12 people on board, 12 soldiers with their equipment. They mount the helicopters and they get inserted into the concerned village. In this case, we're talking about Entoto village. It's one of the areas where a lot of violations have taken place. The moment they heli-land into that, they go into the village, into the vulnerable areas. You can see in the photograph, they're armed cadres in which we are face to face with. This is where the rules of engagement come in. You have to hold your fire. You've got to make sure that there's no more damage than is necessary. Thereafter, the Oryx go on a helicopter patrol to make sure, next please, they maintain an aerial cap to make sure that no more armed groups come into that area. Parallel, foot patrols are also launched. Next, please. Strong foot patrols are launched in the areas where we perceive that the negative armed cadres might be. And finally, the vulnerable population is escorted to safety. Medical assistance provided, and the area is secure from the negative armed groups, thus preventing any human rights violations or any sexual exploitation by the negative armed groups. Now, this is very, very, very simplistically put, just to give the audience a feel, as to, because I'm going to now relate how gender can come in and assist this. Right, next please. Now, this is something unique to MONUSCO. We have 4 types of mechanisms to provide protection to civilians. And now I'm referring to this, and you can even see how the mission integrates together. Next slide, please. In the first case, these are the various responses. In fact, I'm not sure whether I have the luxury of time to go through each one of them. I'll just describe just one in each. The first part is protection of civilians. In protection of civilians, you can see if there's mass violence and targeting of civilians, in such a case, the military response should be to intervene and negotiate, make sure the safety of the civilians, and stop the armed groups to advance. I mean, these are various situations, and we've got various responses. Right, next please. This is for child protection, and the third one is for sexual violence. I'll just gloss over this because I want to explain the protection strategy of civilians. Next slide, please. Next, please. Yep. Okay, this is mechanism. There are 4 types of mechanisms. I'll quickly go through each one of them. Next slide, please. Now, this is joint assessment mission. Now, the objective in this mission is to have a look at what is the social scenario there for providing protection. It's a proactive mechanism. It's a mechanism where we put our teams out there, and it's an integrated team. As you can see, there's human rights, the civil affairs section, child protection section, political affairs division, OCHA, JMAC, NGOs, civil society, and local authorities. The whole idea is to take an assessment, and they take 1 to 3 days, and they give a report to ensure that there is protection if protection is needed. And if it's needed, then it's put there. The second is, next please, a JPT, a joint protection team. Now in the joint protection team, what does happen is we have significant amount of intelligence to say that an attack is going to take place. In this case, again, it's an integrated thing where we get the alert networks into place. We activate mechanisms to prevent such a thing taking place. And if you see the duration of this JPT, it will be 4 to 10 days. Next, please. This is joint investigation. Now, these are investigations of severe human rights violations that have taken place in the remote and interior areas. You can again see the composition. The Joint Human Rights Organization is in the lead. FARDC carries the military prosecutors and inspectors. In case the FARDC personnel have conducted it, they are tried. And child protection section. And of course, if there is a sexual violence, then the sexual violence focal point is also taken along. 1 to 3 days. Next. And next is the joint monitoring team. Now, this is a little unique. This we have support from an NGO, as you will see. It's UNPOL and civilian observers seconded by Folk Berendort Academy through UNDP. And the objective of which, it is essentially to help the government get control of the area. Right, next please. Now, as far as gender is concerned, how can gender assist? Next, our experience in MONUSCO, I'll cover in 2 folds. Next, please. First is the military observers. I'd mentioned to you we have 24 women in the mission with us as military observers. Of these 24, 16 are deployed in the field in team sites. There's a requirement of some of them to function in staff, and we also need to rotate these members from the team sites onto staff. These military observers, women observers are deployed in pairs. And we follow a rainbow concept. That means two observers from same nationality will not be together. Our experience has been they can consult with the local women. It helps increase the outreach to women and children. It helps in information gathering. People are more ready to talk to the ladies, and we get information which otherwise you won't get if their presence was not there. When you send a mixed patrol into the hinterland, it inspires confidence in the women folk there to speak. And gender-specific issues are brought out which can be addressed holistically by the team. And there's greater outreach, especially when there's a human rights violation, or there's been a child abuse, or there's been a sexual harassment. The empathy factor in the ladies works better. Next, please. As far as contingents are concerned, now we have observed that the female gender is mostly in enabling units, which is in hospitals, airfield support units, engineers, nurses, etc. The requirement is to have the female gender in the battalions. We have battalions like the South African battalion, which gets women along as their troops. And it makes a difference. And how it makes a difference, in a very generic manner, you can see. While you patrol and you have a woman soldier, it increases outreach. They can find out the routes that they have to take for patrolling, the areas where they would control the wood, and specific issues. In checkpoints, it becomes much easier for checking women. and the various other issues. I've listed them. All right. Now, next, please. Now, the way forward is actually listed in the DPKO DFS paper of March 2010, which really tells you at the operation, at the strategic, at the operational and the tactical level, actions that we need to take so that which can enhance peace building by incorporating gender. I won't labor on this because I really don't have the luxury of time. We have one more speaker after me. So this is available and I can proliferate this with you all. Just keep flipping through the slides, please. Next, 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 please. Next, next. Okay. Now these are two quick impact projects that I want to just bring out before you. We do something called as civil military interface as well as quick impact projects. One of those projects, this is at Kalimi, which is in the east on Lake Tanganyika. This is construction of a maternity camp at Camp Marin in Kalimi. In addition, we have constructed a training center at Lukusa near Kisangani, in which we've kept in mind the privacy needs of the females. This is a military training camp for the FARDC. It's been constructed with Chinese assistance. Next, please. And when we conduct our medical aid camps in the interior, we do look after the needs of women and children. Next, please. Well, I have finished here. I'll now hand over to the representative from the government of DRC, who will share her thoughts with you. Thank you very much.